Hey there and welcome back to my YouTube chess channel where we together explore the exciting chess world. I am Roman, 15 years old, and I hope that you are feeling great, because today's topic is a step-by-step guide about the stunning and famous Queen Gambit opening, after which also the very popular series on Netflix was named. By the way, let me know down there in the comments whether you have watched it, and if yes, whether you have liked it. So the Queen's Gambit is one of the oldest known openings in the whole game of chess, reaching back to the 15th century, and it starts with the moves pawn to d4 and d5, followed by pawn to c4, the gambiting or the gambit of the c4 pawn. Even if it is called a gambit, because white is basically sacrificing this pawn here on c4, it is not considered very good or optional for black, or better for black to capture this pawn here in the second move of the game, because they cannot retain the pawn without any disadvantages, any incurring disadvantages. So in this video I will show you some sidelines of the Queen's Gambit and of course also the main lines. Starting with the Queen's Gambit declined, also my favorite variation. Technically every other move in this position than capturing the pawn on c4, so accepting the gambit, could be named as the Queen's Gambit declined because we don't accept it. But still, other variations like for example the Slav defense or the Shigordan defense, also the counter gambit, the Alban counter gambit, are still treated separately. So the main line of the Queen's Gambit declined goes after pawn to d6, just defending and supporting this d5 pawn in the center of the chessboard. In most of the times the game goes on with white developing their knight on c3, and then the game can continue with normal developing moves like knight to f6, bishop to g5, pinning the knight, and so on and so on. White is often planning to break through the center of the chessboard with pawn to e4. But knight to f3 in this position in the Queen's Gambit declined is also pretty popular. White now starts to develop his minor pieces after establishing a solid pawn center here in the first two moves. Unlike to knight to c3, this move doesn't exactly and instantly prepare the breakthrough with pawn to e4 in the center of the chessboard, but knight to f3 still controls many important squares here in the center of the chessboard, and supports, for example, the pawn here on d4, also the very important e5 square here in the Queen's Gambit declined variation. Furthermore, we are now closer to castling kingside, so do the short castling after this bishop gets out of here. And it is very interesting, there's an actually pretty interesting fact and funny fact about the Queen's Gambit declined variation. Because during the 1927 World Championship between Alexander Alyoshin and Capablanca, of the 34 played games, except from the first and the third one, every game, so the other 32 games, began with this opening, so the Queen's Gambit declined. Isn't this interesting? Now let's continue with the second main line, the Queen's Gambit accepted. It is definitely less popular than the decline variation, but it still has its reputation. So after black has captured the white pawn here on c4, in most of the cases the most popular move here is to develop your knight on f3. So white is not instantly planning and preparing to regain the lost pawn here on c4, but they rather prevent an opponent's attack by just controlling the center a bit more, like the d4 and e5 squares. So in most of the cases, black answers with the Alyoshin variation with pawn to a6. Nah, I'm just joking. So you could play this move, it's actually a move in a variation and is played sometimes on higher niveau, but if you're a chess beginner or a lower advanced player, I just wouldn't recommend it to you. So knight to f6 is the way to go, pawn to e3, and yes, just developing moves like this. You could now, for example, play the interesting move bishop to g4, pinning this knight on f3 and entering the Janowski-Larsen variation. Or you play just a similar move, pawn to e6 in this position, and continue developing your chess pieces. So this move here, pawn to e6, just prepares the development of your kingside bishop here on f8. But instead of knight to f3 in this position, it's also pretty common to develop and to play pawn to e3 or pawn to e4. So just to develop your e-pawn with the intention to open up the diagonal for your king's bishop here, instantly attacking black's weakest point, and that's the here undefended pawn on c4 that we have just lost. So let's at first take a look at pawn to e4, the old variation. Here we instantly build up a very solid pawn center here, and we also take the black pawn here on c4. And it's also pretty interesting that here, without wasting any time in building up this crazy and strong pawn center and structure, we basically force our opponent to choose a strategy of how to build up and fight against our pawn center, because if they don't choose one, they just have to live with us having a very strong pawn center. Therefore, black often either plays instantly pawn to e5 or also pawn to c5 in this position, just in both of the cases attacking our pawn here on d4. But if you want to continue a bit more slower and less aggressive, you can also develop your knight either here on c6 or also the other knight here on f6, leading to Aljochin-like positions. Now let's take a look at pawn to e3 as a continuation in the Queen's Gambit accepted variation. So here white puts the safety of their d4 pawn just above, instantly controlling and occupying the whole center of the chessboard. But pawn to e3 is basically pretty similar to pawn to e4, but still pawn to e4 is a bit more popular and famous in the chess world. But they both open up the very important diagonal for our king's bishop and attack the c4 pawn. So black often answers pretty aggressively on pawn to e3 with instantly pawn to e5. And here when you're playing the black chess pieces, you have to be pretty careful, because now it's pretty interesting, because altogether black cannot anymore secure the safety of their c4 pawn that they've just won by accepting the gambit. For example, there is a very funny and dangerous for black trap after they play pawn to b5, because if they do this, they will lose the game. By the way, if you're also interested in this opening trap, you are very lucky, because I have also made a video about this trap. Feel free to check it out down there in the video description, or also here above me in the info box after you have finished watching this video. So if black is a bit smarter and does not play pawn to b5 here instead of pawn to e5, we can continue with capturing the black pawn here, and then black answers pretty aggressively with capturing our pawn here on d4 too. So this was it already with this video, which I have shown you the two main lines of the Queen's Gambit. The Queen's Gambit accepted and the Queen's Gambit declined. Let me know down there in the comments whether you want to have a part 2 with more lines, more sidelines of the Queen's Gambit. Then I will make a video about them too. So till next time, bye!